All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have with me today John DePass. Been a personal trainer for 30 years. He's a holistic health coach and the author of the ebook Imperfection, which basically says you don't have to be perfect to lose your weight once and for all. He's also the creator of the 4-Day Detox Natural Health and Wellness Nutrition and Exercise program. He's a personal advocate for self-love and universal acceptance. It's about encouraging everyone that he meets to love others as they would like to be loved. I think he's making a great impact on the world, and I want to welcome him to the show today. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
So why don't you start by telling everyone a little bit about who you are?
Well, I've been a coach and helper of people for 30 years. It's been really a lifetime commitment for me. I started into fitness and wellness at 13 when I got picked on at school. And I got a little bit roughed up at recess time in front of the girls, and I was embarrassed by that. And I made a commitment at that time that I was going to make a change in my physical structure. I was going to start working out because this wasn't going to happen to me again. And I talk about that time because I just really want to say that, it started for me with a little bit of a brokenness to it. Like, it started because I felt I wasn't good enough. It started from an embarrassment. Like, I was embarrassed in front of the girls. So I felt like I needed to be bigger and be more to be happy, healthy, and well. So I just want to frame that up, that I really started health and wellness from a broken place. And that continued, right till 19, I was Mr. Junior Ontario. I was in the Mr. Universe competition by 23, and by 25 I was Mr. North America. I went to school for this. I studied kinesiology, I studied psychology, and I really set myself to really help people in the health and wellness space for a lifetime. But I still had this kind of underlying brokenness to me, that I wasn't good enough as I was, and I kind of needed to have this big suit of muscular armor around me to be healthy and well. And that broken idea led me into, anabolic steroids and stimulants, and a kind of a addiction to everything in the physical. And I really went down a wrong energetic path with my life, and I like to blame it on a poor thought that the whole thing started with, and it started with that broken idea that I wasn't good enough, and I just started kind of demonstrating that for myself all throughout my life. And it was showing up in my relationships, and it was showing up in every single aspect of my life. I went bankrupt at 30. I went bankrupt again at 40. And here I am now at 50, and, turning my whole life around over the last decade. When the bottom of my life really fell out of my life at 40, when I went bankrupt the second time, I almost lost my wife and my children. And it was the time where I started to look back at myself and my life and what I was doing. And it's when I first started to take responsibility for my life. And I think that this is a really important thing. And I really think that this happens to everyone somewhere between 40 and 60. We come to this place like, this is how I have been living up to this point. But, how do I really want the end of my life to look? How do I really want the back end of my life to look? And what am I going to do differently that it shows up that way? Because if I continue doing things exactly as I am, I'm not really going to get something different happen to me. So, I'm an advocate for change. I'm an advocate for new ideas. I'm an advocate for nature. I say nature heals. I'm an advocate for for accepting others and trying others' ideas on, because it's new ideas that help us to step forward. This is how change happens. This is how I changed my life, was by, taking responsibility for it. And then, over the last decade, changing the way I thought. And it took me 5 years of, kind of messing around with mindset and alkaline nutrition and fruits and vegetables before, 5 years ago, I really made a commitment when I found a book that really helped me to get over my roadblocks, my stumbling blocks that I had from my science degrees and my science background and my bodybuilding background. I was very attached to protein and protein requirements and all of the vitamin and mineral requirements. And I bumped into Dr. Arnold Ehret. I found the ideas of Dr. Robert Morse, Dr. Sebi, Hilton Hotima, Brian Clement, and these doctors and these ideas, I finally embraced them. And then once I really fully embraced them, I really started to see rapid change in my life. But it took me 5 years of kind of messing around back and forth before I was able to really commit. And I want to say that, it's that decision, it's that commitment, and it comes from trying on some new ideas and actually experimenting with those ideas. And then, through trial and error, we come to know for ourselves. Rather than shutting something down without giving it a try, I encourage everyone to kind of look and listen to what we're talking about today and, do your own diligence with it. Like, bring it into your life and experience it a little bit for yourself. Be a scientist for yourself and say, I tried this and, does it work for me, right or wrong? Regardless of what everyone in the world is telling me, like, does it work for me myself?
Definitely. So, for you, would you say intermittent fasting is that thing that worked?
For me, intermittent fasting was definitely one of those things that was a key aspect of healing. Like, this is a different thought process than what we learn. What we learn from the world is that, you need to get this and this and this in order to be healthy. If you don't get it, you're going to slow down your metabolism. Something's going to go wrong. And intermittent fasting idea is really like, when I take food away, that the body actually gets an opportunity to heal. And this is a different thought paradigm completely than, what we know from general nutrition.
Definitely. So, what are some of the benefits that someone might experience from this removal of food then?
Fasting has been around for thousands of years. It's not new. It's just really the name intermittent has kind of been put in front of it. And this is, the modern day fasting. But that intermittent fasting is, just controlling the amount of time that you're fasting. So, it's just scheduled fasting, and really fasting in general, in 2016 won the Nobel Peace Prize. It was the Nobel Peace Prize went to someone that was studying fasting and the benefits of it. So since 2016, we've seen like a real significant rise in the popularity of intermittent fasting. Like, the big science behind intermittent fasting would be autophagy. Autophagy or autophagy, depending on, who you're speaking to. And really it's cellular cleansing. When the body is empty, the organelles in the cell get cleaned out and the body kind of gets rid of things in the cell that aren't working optimally. Things are removed this way. When the body is empty, you're not digesting. And when you're not digesting, you're freeing up energy, because a ton of our energy is being spent in digestion. Almost half of our energy is, yes. Someone mentioned the mitochondria. Awesome. Yes, the mitochondria are one of the organelles in the cell. It's a powerhouse organelle in the cell. It helps the cell to generate energy, right? So organelles like the mitochondria, get cleaned out when the body is empty. Fasting has many benefits for immunity, immune health, strengthening the immune, boosting the immune system, improving our sleep, reducing our stress, creating stillness inside of the body, digestive stillness. You see, stillness is how the body heals. Like if we break an arm, we put it in a cast and we hold it still, and the arm heals, it sets itself. So it's to see really that the body heals naturally when it's still. Now, when we take food out of the stomach, we create digestive stillness. And when we create digestive stillness, we actually create a deeper mental stillness. So, unfooding or taking food out of the body, or intermittent fasting, or fasting in general, unfooding the body, I call it unfooding, taking food away from the body creates a stillness in the body, creates a stillness in the body, creates a stillness in mind, and all things heal this way.
I love that. That's great. So when you would say someone's doing a fast, is it more advantageous to remove all foods or some foods? Like is it different for everyone? Because my belief as a nutritionist would be that it's different for everyone. But is there like a general rule of thumb that you could point people towards?
We got to talk about general, and we also have to talk about personal and specific. I think both. As a general rule, if you look in nature, when an animal gets injured or sick, it doesn't eat. Maybe you're familiar with your dog and your dog getting sick, and maybe you've noticed that your dog doesn't eat when it's sick. It just lays still in the corner. So emptiness is an aspect of healing, kind of like universally. Now, having said that is a universal kind of understanding of health, we also have to consider that an aspect of healing is also emotional. That healing is an emotional experience. And if you try to force yourself to do something that you're not accustomed to, that forcefulness can be emotionally negative and can generate a resistance within the individual. So, fasting is the way to heal, but sometimes we have to allow someone to attenuate to it or become accustomed to it through a practice of maybe first just removing the more heavy or dense foods. Like maybe start off by fasting from the heaviest, most dense foods, rather than, taking all food away. And for some people, that's fine, and that's wonderful, and that's great. But for some people, that's not. And for those people that do feel, restricted, overly restricted with the fast, how about just reducing significantly the heavier foods? Like, how about just reducing the meats and the fats and the starches? These are the macronutrients, and these are the foods that we've been taught that we are energized from, nourished and energized from. So that's all of our nutrition education is about: proteins and fats and carbohydrates. However, if you really look at that and challenge that idea, you see that it kind of falls apart a little bit. Like if you don't eat, I mean, there's lots of people that have lived without food for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. If you do your diligence, you'll find that exists. Although it's not really popular to understand that is the truth. And at the same time, we're told we need food for energy. So how do you explain that people went 30 days, 90 days, a year or more without food and they still had energy? So that doesn't really make sense. And if you really look at it, I can go 3 months without food, without perishing. I could only go 3 weeks without water. I could only go 3 minutes without air. And I think it's really important. And that's a real big idea that I got from that book, Arnold Ehret and the Mucusless Diet, that really shifted my understanding of health. And it was just that the body is sustained really by oxygen. The sustenance of the human is not nourishment by macronutrients, which we have been told or sold. It's actually nourished by O2, oxygen, and the elimination of waste, carbon dioxide. Right? The human will die more quickly from a problem with the kidney. Because, I mean, if you have a problem with the kidney, you got to go and get your kidney cleaned daily. You have to go for a kidney
Dialysis.
Hook your dialysis, right? So if the body doesn't rid itself of the poisons that you put in it, you'll die. So see the sense there that we'll die from the toxicity of what we're putting into ourselves in a matter of days if we don't get it out and clean it out through the kidney. So it's just to change our understanding of nourishment. We've been sold this understanding of macronutrient nourishment. And in truth, the human is more nourished by water and oxygen and thought and word than it is nourished by food. And that would be the big paradigm shift that I made that helped me to begin to move to real healing, is that healing and health and wellness and energy and vitality is a result of the body's ability to process and utilize oxygen better, rather than it is a factor of me getting more calories in and calories out, which is what we are really told. That your weight is about calories in and calories out and eating protein and fat. That's what we're told. What we're told right now by mainstream kind of understanding, the doctors are toting the ketogenic diet, which is a protein fat diet with intermittent fasting. Now, I'm 100% behind the intermittent fasting part, but I'm not behind the protein and fat. And the reason, because proteins and fats are our most dense foods. They're the most, if you look at them molecularly, they're the biggest molecules, and they require the most digestion for the body. So if you want to, start to move into fasting, I would start by taking down the most dense aspects of our nutrition, which would be protein and fats and starches, or the macronutrients. Micronutrients are highest in our fruits and vegetables. I would move from the more macronutrient rich foods to the micronutrient rich foods. I would move from the proteins, fats, and starches to the fruits and vegetables. I think seems to be the most sensible step towards natural health, using my logic, using my understanding, using my background. This is what I share.
That is pretty logical though. And that's kind of what led you towards this more push towards fruits. Why choosing fruits over vegetables? Like, what's the benefit of that?
Yes, and this is another one. Like, and if you again, if you look at the mainstream teaching, the ketogenic diet, which is protein, fat, and vegetable, it's a move from starch, which is a good move, but it's a real big push towards vegetable sugar, which is glucose, and really, coming from kinesiology and science and my science background, I was taught that the human is a glucose eater. And I really want to challenge that idea and say that I believe the human is a fructose eater. And if you really start to look at the molecular structure of glucose and fructose, you will begin to see why it's really evident that the human is a fructose eater instead of a glucose eater. And I would tell you that if you understand that glucose is vegetable sugars and fructose is fruit sugars. Now, I would just say, look at the closest relatives of the human, and you got to look at the chimpanzee, the orangutan, it's the primates, and they are predominantly fruit eaters. Similarly, human is also, of the primates, the most evolved, and really is evolved to be really a fructose being. The fructose is the lowest glycemic sugar. If you look at all of the sugars, fructose is by far the lowest glycemic sugar, but everyone totes fruit as sugar. So, we're told that, oh, don't eat the fruit, it's got too much sugar in it. But that is so illogical, because if you do the science research and really challenge that idea, you'll see fructose is the lowest glycemic sugar. And the other part of that is that fructose is a very special sugar in that it can diffuse into the cell without insulin, and that separates it from glucose. And all of the other sugars require insulin to get into the cell. So people that have problems with insulin would benefit from moving to a fructose diet, because fructose can go into the cell without insulin. And you don't have to worry that the blood sugar has gone up with a fructose nutrition, because that fructose will diffuse into the cell naturally. Like, that to me is the most hidden truth. It just doesn't get shared unless you look at the work of Dr. Robert Morse, who's been healing people naturally with a fruit-focused nutrition for over 40 years, but nobody knows. Why is that? Why are these doctors and these ideas suppressed and hidden? And I'll tell you what I think it is if you look at glucose versus fructose molecularly, you'll start to see that fructose contains H3, or structured water, or high energy hydrogen energy, transforming energy, which is what the body needs. And that H3 is missing in the glucose molecule. Now, the beauty of telling humans that they're glucose eaters is that, a field of wheat, you could take that field of wheat in, and you can dry it and pound it out and make flour. And you can put flour on the shelf, and that glucose will sit on the shelf forever. And that makes it very beneficial to tell humans that they're glucose eaters. Whereas if you put fructose, if you put a banana on the shelf, in 2 weeks, it's going to be dead. And so it was beneficial financially for the world to orchestrate this type of teaching, that the human was actually a glucose eater, and teach that to nutritionists, and teach that to the medical community, and teach that to everyone that gets the science degree, so that that's their baseline understanding. And therefore they never look at the fruit, and they always tone it down as being sugar, and they turn it away because we've been told that sugars are bad. But understand that fructose is a different type of animal.
That's such an interesting point. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to wrap up with like your final thoughts on how can, what should people's main motivation be in adopting eating like this more often? Like what would the main takeaway be from today's talk?
The main takeaway for me with fasting, with intermittent fasting, with fruit-focused nutrition, with vegetables, vegan nutrition, moving to plant-based nutrition, reducing proteins and fats in our lifestyle, reducing starches and cooked and processed foods. My biggest takeaway from this is this is not an overnight switch. And you cannot do this by white knuckling it either. Mm-hmm. Like you can't just say, oh, that's it. I learned this information today and I'm all of a sudden going to go vegan and I'm going to cut out all of this and I'm never going to eat meat anymore. I'm never going to do that. Like that's just like, cut that idea out. It can't be about force. It really needs to be about love. Like my experience is with 30 years of coaching is this, like nobody's going to change unless you create a change for them or provide them with a change that they love. Yeah. If they're forcing themselves to do it, they'll never stick with it and they'll never be successful with it. The only way you're going to be successful with this switch is if you can learn how to love it.
That's awesome. We had a question there from Peter. He wanted to know how to get started with intermittent fasting. Any quick tips for him?
Awesome. Quick tips for intermittent fasting would be start with, 14 hours. I think everyone needs to learn how to go 14 to 16 hours of emptiness. So if you eat dinner at 7 o'clock at night, by 8 o'clock, the latest, hopefully, the earlier you could eat your dinner, the better. But whenever you kind of choose your dinner time, I'm not going to eat anything after that. I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to be empty all throughout the night. And then I'm going to come to the morning and I'm going to try to eat my breakfast as late in the day as I can. So the later in the day that I eat my breakfast and the earlier in the night that I eat my dinner, that narrows my eating window. Rather than think about, trying to, intermittent fast, like I'm trying to eat in as small a window as possible. So, you start off with maybe, fasting for 14 hours and eating in an 8-hour window. And then as you get better, you try to shrink your window down to 7 or 6 hours or 5 hours so that your fast becomes a little longer each day. So I would introduce it that way, trying to reduce your eating window. And I would also introduce it this way, is 1 day a week, see if you can stretch yourself to go to that fast. I say no food Monday. Try to see if you can go 24 hours without solid food. Try to cut out the chewing. If you could go to juices, if you can go to water, raw juices, green juices, fruit juices, raw juices, rather than chewing food for 24 hours. 1 day of the week, see if you can extend your fast with a little bit lengthier time.
Amazing. We have 3 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions?
Not sure if there was any chat questions that I didn't see.
There was one from Peter. He wanted to know if coffee or caffeine interferes with the micronutrients.
Yeah, coffee, a big one. It's so popular, coffee and alcohol, right? And it's so tough to say with someone, when they're getting started, you can't drink coffee or you can't drink alcohol. I don't like this type of approach, and I don't like elimination of anything. I say everything needs to be a part of the program, but we need to reduce these aspects of our life. Like we don't need to be using coffee every day. If we can try to get it down to the less frequency of the week. If I can have coffee and alcohol on the weekends, is there a way that I can have my meat, my dairy, my starch, my pizza, my cookies, my cakes on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I have a little bit of relax, and if I have a few flex meals and I have these things, and then Monday to Friday, if I could be focusing more on, living more from fruits and vegetables from nature, things that are going to bring my body back into natural balance, right? The body has come out of balance. We need to bring it back into balance. Nature will do that. Natural foods will do that. Fruits and vegetables. By nourishing ourselves with live fruits and vegetables, we put the balance of nature back into our bodies and lives. And we've been pulled out of nature by moving from incorrect information to cooked and processed foods, proteins, fats, and starches. We've been doing that for 20, 30, 40 years. And the result is we're increasing our sickness, illness, and disease in our bodies and lives. What we need to do actually is get away from this nutrition where we need to get. We need to actually get out. We need to get stuff out. And fasting and live fruits and vegetables enable and allow that to happen.
That's a great place to wrap this up. Thank you so much, John. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Great.